Welcome everyone, I'm Gerard Scarpaci, co-founder of the Hairbrained community, and we are here for episode number 9 in the Professionals Who Practice series, sponsored by our good friends at Pivot Point. Today I'm super excited to bring you Jude Viola, who I personally am obsessed with. I look at her work all the time, I find it incredibly inspiring. I love that she's a young craft hairdresser who's really carrying on incredible technique and making beautiful, beautiful hair, and I can't wait to get into this lesson. So Judith, tell us what you got planned for us.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction.
You're very welcome.
But yeah, so what we are doing today is I'm doing a little play on a textured bob. I do have my client here, Erica, and I did do some pre-cutting on her today just to get her to kind of like a long bob shape. I'm kind of starting to slowly see those long bobs filter out, so I just wanted to play with a little bit of a different bob shape. So what I'm starting with is just horizontals in the nape, like super, super subtle diagonal forwards, a little bit of a push forward for them, and then just starting with a nice chunky point cut, just to start building up some texture. Erica is pretty fine, so I can take pretty good sized sections. So that one's going to go from about occipital to just behind the ear. One thing I want to point out just really quickly while I'm here, my sections, taking clean sections is super important, especially in a type of bob shape, even though I am going for a more textured look. So one thing I'll show you guys again really quickly, just over here. So I'm looking to that right side. So I'm going to use that wide tooth kind of my comb, push everything forward so it's going the direction that I really want it to. I'm going to take my thumb and then just push that. So when I lift that up, I just get a really nice clean section.
So as I mentioned, and for those of you just joining us, we're here for the Professionals Who Practice series. This is something we've partnered with Pivot Point to kind of get the message out there about that even when you're an experienced professional, you still need to keep practicing to get better and better at your craft. Judith and I were talking about that a little bit earlier. She's still kind of young in the craft. She's been doing hair for how many years now?
About 6 years if you include school.
About 6 years if you include school, which says a lot to how talented she is because, as I said, she's one of my favorite hairdressers right now. In those 6 years, did you start your career off by practicing on mannequins?
For sure. That was the first couple months of school for me. I was super lucky to go to Tony and Guy, and they put you through a pretty rigorous fundamentals course for the first month and then going into more advanced stuff in the second month, but all on doll heads. So these things hold a special place in my heart for sure. It puts me back in the student mode.
And then we were just discussing how now in your career you're in the phase where you're doing a lot of teaching and so on. Tell us about the salon that you're at, because it's another one of those favorite salons. Yeah. And tell us about the teaching that you're doing.
So I'm super happy to be a part of the Young American Salons. We have a couple locations in Tustin, which is super cool. And we are all independent hairdressers. But what I really love is that there is still a focus on helping each young hairstylist kind of find their place. So I've been super fortunate to take on the assistants in our salon and start building a program for them. So that really kind of inspired what I'm doing today. I do a ton of dry cutting in the salon lately. I don't know, almost calling it like intuitive cutting, so not always having the best plan for what I'm doing. Do you need me to turn?
Yeah, I can turn a little bit towards the camera.
Cool, let's do that. Is that better?
So Judith, like as I watch you manipulate the scissor, it's very supple, the way you're just like moving it gently in different directions. Can you talk to me a little bit about your control here with point cutting and why you're manipulating it?
For sure. So with a chunky point cut, I really do want to go in and see some aggressive texture. So I'm resting that bottom blade on my finger and then just really moving back and forth. I don't want one push any specific direction.
Yeah, I noticed you didn't just go 1, 2, 3, 4 from left to right. You kind of went one way. You come back and kind of define that little, for lack of a better word, pie shape.
Yeah, so it's really just wanting to see those little divots throughout. So there really is movement. It's not just sitting in one place. So with that too, go into a little bit of technique, because this is, again, one thing I really want to focus on practicing today is just speaking to you guys about what I'm doing, being in an environment where I am getting back into kind of teaching and sharing mode. I think speaking about what we do is super important. So what I'm doing is kind of coming through. I'm actually going to lift her head up just a touch.
Yeah, just go forward. So with these tripods, Judith, it's a new tripod for her. It's an incredible tripod. You just go forward to loosen it, and then once you find the height, you tighten it.
Perfect.
So again, great tripods from Pivot Point. Judith was just mentioning it's without a doubt the best tripod she's ever used.
For sure, it was really easy to get set up, which was really nice. Height-wise, I'm short and I'm not super strong, so this was pretty easy to get set up. And she's really flexible, which I love.
So, Judith, I want to give a couple shout-outs to some of our friends. Harris Jack is watching, Rick Jaramillo, a good friend of mine, Steve Kim, Joel Torres, who's your dear friend, says you're a very talented hairstylist.
He's the best.
Chris McGregor says Judith is the best. So you got your friends and your peeps watching out there. We've got Michelle Donald watching all the way from Scotland. Guys, we always love to hear where you're watching from and see how far away. We've had people in Africa, the Philippines, Pakistan. Let us know where you're watching from. And
Malaysia.
Again, if you're just joining us, we are here with Jude Viola, who, again, I can't say enough about how impressed I am by not only her skill, but her professionalism, the way she carries herself, the work that she's putting out there. I'm her #1 fan. And we're so pleased to have her sharing today for the Professionals in Practice series, sponsored by Pivot Point. And our other guest today is Erica. This is the lovely Erica. She's one of our favorite accessible models in terms of price from Pivot Point. And if you're interested in trying these, you can head to Hairbrained Pro, where we have 2 different mannequins to choose from. If you're looking for a larger selection, the whole selection, you go to the Pivot Point shop. It's pivotpointshop.com. Let's get back into this incredible work with Judith.
So this is a good point to get in. I'm really working on, with this cut, kind of blending visual and technical skill. So actually, before I get into my next section, this is going to be a good stopping point before I keep going up her head. With that chunky point cut, I'm actually going to be looking for just a little bit of more visual balance other than just that perfect technical. So I'm still pulling out here. It feels just a touch longer on my left side, which is common for me. I know we all have our little habits we get into, so that's always a good one for me to go back and check. But you are going to see a lot more kind of variation in that line because I am doing that really textured, chunky cut.
Judith, we've got a few questions coming in. Sandy Williams is wondering if you want this to flip up when you're done.
I wouldn't mind that. Erica's hair is pretty fine, actually. She has a cool wave. I noticed in the pre-cut, in the beginning, she was actually drying pretty straight. And then once I was able to go in there and get a little bit of shorter layers in the nape, it started curling up a little bit better. So I'm not necessarily mad if it does flip up just a little bit.
Her hair type supports that.
Yeah, exactly. It just gives me a little bit more of that fun kind of texture that we're looking for.
Deb Davis is asking, as you're heading up towards the top, will you continue to cut the same way, or will you make any changes in your technique? Are you pointing exactly the same way?
I'm going to do the same. She is finer towards the front, so I may go in a little softer with my point cut, and actually that'll be a good thing to show you guys too. So getting back in, getting that over the side.
So I noticed, that you definitely tend to touch the hair a lot and move it around a lot. It feels like you're kind of sculpting as you're cutting. You're pressing it on the neck there, and then you're lifting it. What are you looking for as you're moving it around like that?
I'm looking to see that it actually is moving on me. That has been a big thing as, again, I'm transitioning away from just this perfect technical cutting into incorporating a little bit more of the vision and just the feel of what I'm looking for. So just seeing if it's actually like doing what I want. So there is that little bit of a flip. That could be her curl, that could be me, like that little bit of like maybe over tension with my fingers. I think that's a good point to make, because with doll heads, this is really just like such a safe space to play with different techniques and to see if I'm making an error and be able to overcorrect. If I wanted to go shorter, she's not going to get mad at me, so I could.
I love that. I'm going to make a t-shirt that says, mannequins are my safe space. Because it's true, when you're learning a new technique or practicing or trying something out, you don't have that added pressure of trying to make sure that your guest or your client is happy or your model. So that's kind of the idea behind Professionals Who Practice. Gives you a chance to get in there and try different things. A couple shout outs before we get back to the haircut. We've got Shell Mercia watching all the way from Australia. Dom Winspear all the way from Australia. We've got some local people too. We've got Sandy Kalajian watching from Huntington Beach, so right next door.
So as I'm going through here, I am going to go to a 1-finger step. So as I was working behind her ear, I kind of transitioned to a 2 fingers, which is building a subtle graduation. As I'm going right around her ear, just to kind of avoid a hole, I am going to go back to that 1 fingers, which you'll see I'm really placing that finger right against her skin, so I know I'm where I want to be. Also too, when I was in the back, I was getting a little deeper, a little more aggressive. Here I am going to go through, still kind of doing that left-right, back and forth motion, but a little bit more of a shallow point cut. I still want to see that texture.
So some very subtle manipulation. In the back, you had more fingers against the neck, so you'd be elevating a little higher. You were going in deeper. On the sides, you've pulled it back to just the 1 finger's depth, and you're going in a little more shallow?
Exactly.
All right, I'm learning. Hey, if I'm learning, hopefully everybody at home is learning. Let us know, guys, if you're learning some stuff. We'd love to hear that.
So I'm going to take a quick peek at her. Again, we're not just like robots cutting these looks, so I want to see if I'm actually liking where I placed her. By the end of this, I will figure out how to use this thing. But I feel like she's a little long. I angled it a bit. I think I want to go just a little bit more square because I know I'm going to add some layers around the front anyway. So
lots of love coming in for you, Judith. You have a lot of friends and fans out there, and people just love this type of haircutting.
Super cool.
Rick Jaramillo, our good friend, is asking when the next Elevate is going to be in Southern California. That's a good question. We did an Elevate Hair here. That's an event where we get all local hairdressers together and jam, and we had Judith on stage last year. She did an incredible job, along with about 30 other Southern California hairdressers. I'd definitely like to get one done this summer, Rick, so keep your eyes open, and we'll probably be doing another one. Probably again in Costa Mesa. It was such a great venue.
So again, here you'll see me moving back towards that 2 fingers depth. So now I have 2 fingers between her neck and giving me that elevation.
So Judith, let's talk a little bit about your concept or your aesthetic, cool girl hair. It's kind of a little hashtag that you use, and it seems like it's your aesthetic or your ethos. Talk to us a little bit about what that means to you, cool girl hair.
Yeah, I don't know where it came from, but I know that word cool, I feel like it went away for a little while. It was kind of uncool to use, but it's always kind of been in my vocabulary. So I've found that, again, Tony and Guy is kind of like my background, can't escape them. I really fell in love with a lot of just these really wearable textured looks that they did, and I think that has kind of just stuck with me. So whenever I am moving, or as I'm looking for kind of my dream clientele, I'm just looking for these girls that are cool, maybe not super fussy with their hair, because then I can really give them like a unique textured look that's going to kind of just support that individuality. Cool girl hair.
And I noticed that you feel like you've started to really build a lot of your clientele from Instagram, and you're always saying, I met this client on Instagram. How do you do that? How do you kind of find clients, and how do you build your base of clients?
That's my special secret that I'll share with you guys. I've always been pretty shy, so the idea of just like going up to a client in person and being like, hey, I'd love to do your hair, it's been a little bit scary for me. So Instagram was amazing because it's allowed me to reach out to people just through a message. If they don't respond, I'm not going to get my feelings hurt. But I kind of think about like where would that cool girl hang out, and then using the geotag feature, which is really amazing, I'll search those places and then again just reach out. So a little bit of stalking until I find that cool.
But you got to do what you got to do.
Oh, and it works well. You know, I think it's also helped me break through a little bit of that. I'm going to 3 fingers depth here. I'll show you. So you can really see now, I have a much flatter plane. I'm not going to do as much of that flipping. And then just going through and just texturizing that. But yeah, so that's my little secret, and it's really helped me just find those people that I really want in my chair, because mannequins are amazing just for, again, having that safe space like we've talked about, to do whatever I want, to try new techniques, maybe to build like a standard textured bob that I can use on my clients, but at the end of the day, we need a portfolio and we need real people in our chair. So,
right, so you can map out a new idea, practice it, get confident, try new things.
Thanks for sharing your bit of genius there with the crowd.
Jane Costanzo has a technical question. Are you combing everything just straight down natural fall,
yes,
or are you looking at using any over direction?
I have been doing just natural fall, so I'm coming from the top of that section, combing all the way down. Let's get that out of the way.
And any benefit or difference between, for you, why combing it straight down rather than over-directing it?
I really just want that heaviness to it.
So if you're over-directing, you'd be adding a little more graduation, and the line wouldn't have the same weight to it?
Well, I know I'm building a little bit of weight with my fingers in that elevation, so I know I'm going to layer through this, so it's just not necessary. I want more of a square feel through there, so I don't need that increase.
Cool, great question. Thank you, Jane Costanzo. All right, so it looks like you've got most of one side complete and maybe one section or so on the other. And I noticed you pre-sectioned in a horseshoe, kind of right on the round of the head.
Yeah.
What's the thinking there?
So I am going to actually layer through the top. And just in the interest of efficiency, I'm not going to complete that bob line all the way because I know I'm going to be breaking it down anyway. I am not the fastest hairdresser around. Sue me.
You're in good company, don't worry.
But
we very rarely have fast hairdressers.
Any little way that I can save some time, I'll do it. So I just don't want to incorporate that.
So since that's not going to be one length anyway, you just know the outline stopping here, there's going to be some layering above there.
Exactly.
Okay, great question coming in from Katie McCluskey, a good friend of ours and someone who's been on an HB Live in the past. Why do you prefer such a large scissor? Is that just personal preference, or is there any benefit with this type of cutting?
It is, I think, personal preference, but because I'm going to transition to some dry cutting, I can just have one tool for everything. I am also, with that 2 fingers, I am getting in there a little deeper with some of my texture, so it gives me that little bit of extra room.
A little bit easier to maneuver, and your hand is a little further away from the work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is great for me. Again, when we talk about professionals who practice, I think a big thing is like being pretty honest with yourself about the little areas that you need to work on. I've always been like way too up in it, so anything that can get me to back up a little bit is just really helpful. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you can't see the forest from the trees, right? And if you're right up on top of the section, you can't see the big picture.
Exactly.
So put a little distance there. You know, it's the little things that make a great kind of crafted haircut, and just pointing in a beautiful square line. And again, I just love the way you manipulate the scissor, kind of going in one direction and tightening it up in the other. I'll be honest, it's not something I've done a lot of, but I'm gonna play with that a little bit. So thank you for that one.
That's one thing that I
If we loosen this, it makes it so much easier.
Thank you.
Loosen, go up and down, and then you tighten it right to where you want it.
Sometimes I like to make things harder on yourself.
Yeah, these are the great pivot point tripods, really heavy duty. They can take a lot of beating, and this one's traveled around the country quite a lot. It's Jude's first time using it, but it's got a great control here to move the head back and forth, and a great control here to go up and down. Once you get the hang of it, you will love it.
Yes.
All right, moving into the top. So
I'm combing straight back. I did have everything pulled up into one section too. Now I'm just kind of combing all this down, going from her natural center part kind of right to her whirl. I'm not going to worry about keeping that disconnected from the bottom because I know I'm going to kind of connect those layers anyway. How's the view there, Kelly?
Awesome, great.
That you loosen the knob, and then you go up and down. Righty tighty, lefty loosey. It'll never fail you. Righty tighty.
So now what I'm going to do is go in and place a little bit of a radial to separate the front and the back. I'm not sure how much direction I fully want to do yet, but I do want to place that. So what I'm doing is placing my comb on the top of her head and just seeing where it starts to kind of pivot down, and that's going to tell me where the front of her head is and what's starting to round back, so I can place those layers where I want.
Here's a great question coming in from Olga Pasek. Why did you choose to become a hairdresser, Judith?
Well, that's a good question. Honestly, I think it was a weird intuition. I was kind of in a dead-end job. I was not enjoying college, not enjoying my work in banking, and
so you went from banking to hairdressing.
Banking to hairdressing, but I had, I'm going to get rid of some of this just really quick. I'm doing a little bit of a slice here.
So you just kind of eliminated the excess length longer than the outline.
Because I want to go in more with a rounded shape, but that was just too much for me to handle. So I'm going from her length. That's going to be my starting point for the layering, and I'm going to work kind of a rounded shape here. So one thing I do want you guys to see, I am going to be pretty intentional with the angle of this point cut, because I do want these to fall a little more seamlessly. If I were to come in a downward motion, that's going to sit super chunky.
It's more of a corner.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
It's so visible. So by coming from this angle, it's a bit more like concave.
Yeah, so they sit into each other really nicely.
Love that.
But yeah, it was an intuition thing. I always wanted to be a teacher when I was younger. I wanted to be a doctor at one point. I wanted to be a psychologist, so I think...
Now you get to be all of those things.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to switch to this side now. Let's see, that's a good angle.
I'm going to move this whole tripod just a little bit. Like that, is that better, Cal? Yes, Kelly was telling me we need a better angle.
So I'm going to work through with pivoting sections now, and I'm going to bring that up from the top. Again, just get rid of some of that.
Lots of love coming in. Harris Jack says, this girl is great. I feel super educated.
Oh,
how do you like that?
Thank you.
Hey Judith, so exciting to watch you tonight from Calvin Tran.
Yay, Calvin.
Kyla Betton is asking about your shears. Can you tell us a little bit about them, the length, the make, why you like them?
These are Keiki for Italian guy for Keiki, I guess. They are 6.5s, and they're just my favorite.
So are those
really lightweight.
Are those the ones you started with in school? Are they the same pair, or?
This was the first pair I bought once I started my assisting program. One of my mentors was giving me a really hard time about the tiny little 5 inches, so I invested in a new pair.
All right, so you have one of the best hairdressers in the world watching you right now, Mr. Michael Pulcinelli. Are you familiar with Michael?
I'm not.
So Michael's probably one of the, in my mind, one of the most creative, visionary hairstylists, hairdressers. For many years, he crafted a lot of the looks for Sebastian, and now he's working with our friends at Davines. So we're super excited for that, and we love you, Michael. Thank you for all the support over the years.
Thank you for watching. Davines is amazing. Davines.
Davines.
But I work with that in the salon. Actually, I did prep Erica with a combination of just the Day, which is a super lightweight leave-in conditioner, and also their new curl primer, which is also a really light, kind of milky conditioner. I prepped her with the Love earlier, and then waited just to re-wet her down.
So that's looking beautiful already, and I just love the way you style the hair with your fingers as you cut. And I think sometimes we miss that. We get so blueprinted that I'm following. I believe in precision haircutting, but what the precision and the visual is really what it's all about.
That's been a huge thing for me. Let's see. How's this? We don't see from there stuff. This is a big thing, so just one thing you guys are reminding me of now. When I was with Tony and Guy, they had a pretty rigorous, almost education, like art team program to go through. And one thing they also had us really practicing on was demoing and just demo skills and just making sure that your audience always has a good viewpoint, because I think with hair, I can only speak so much. You really do have to kind of see so you can recreate it on your own later.
You know, one of the things I say very often, and I said it on stage this weekend at the teach-in that we did in Los Angeles, was that the level of Southern California hairdressers, I think, is probably the highest in the U.S. Due to the fact that Tony and Guy and Vidal Sassoon have both had schools and salons here for the past 30 years. And it's just, you follow the timeline back, and you always find that the great craft hairdressers had some starting point at one of those two companies here in Southern California.
And I'm super grateful for it. Definitely would love to start taking some Vidal classes too. They have a totally different way of doing things, and I'm super curious about.
You're welcome, Michael. All truth. It's easy to do PR about people when it's all true. All right, so again, you're removing the length first with that, would you call it like a slicing motion?
Yeah, a slice.
And then you go through and do your point cutting. Mm-hmm. And explain again the angle of point cutting. That for me was another aha moment. I love that little lesson.
Yeah, so again, as I'm going through here, I do want these to still sit softly, even though I'm doing kind of a chunkier, more aggressive point cut. So what I'm actually going to do, I'll show you just with this little extra bit that I'm supposed to cut off anyway. If I were to come in here...
1 second. Okay.
Yeah, cool.
Okay.
So if I were to come in here, almost more in a downward motion and cut into that, I'm going to create these little almost heavy peaks, like a cliff I'm about to jump off, almost is what it looks like with me. So when I drop that down, I'm going to spin this.
Yeah, let's get this way.
That layer ends up sitting pretty heavy versus if I were to come in with my shear coming from the underneath. These layers are going to now sit into each other. So you can almost see as I'm dropping it down, they're kind of like laying into one another and kind of like hugging almost. So they're just going to sit a lot softer so that when I have to go in and do some texturizing later, I'm not making my job harder.
Kieran is asking, do you have a name for this type of bob? He says in the UK they might have different names. He's wondering what you call it.
I mean, this is to me just kind of like a chunky textured bob is what I would say. She's not afraid of some layering, so layered square bob, maybe?
Awesome. So again, for those of you just joining us, I see our buddy Frank Mussolino just joined in. Yes,
and Nanette as well. Hey, Nanette.
And Nanette, it is a very nice tripod, Frank. It's a pivot point tripod. And we want to give that special shout out to Pivot Point. If you're a professional who practices and you're always working on your craft and new ideas, that's what this series is all about. Very, very talented hairdressers. We always know that we're either getting better or we're going backwards. Nobody stays the same. Sometimes you need to practice. And one of the great tools for practicing are Pivot Point mannequins and tripods. So check them out at the Pivot Point shop or head to hairbrained.pro and you can see the mannequins that we have available from Pivot Point.
So one thing I'm doing here, I am taking a little larger sections through the front and over directing back. So I'm almost getting these little tiny inversions throughout. So really bringing that back because I do want to save some of that length and weight, but I also don't want to be scared of layering around the front. As I have gone through my career working with clients, there's always just this little voice inside that's like, over direct back to save length and weight. And sometimes I find myself just finding it way too heavy. And
it's a bit what we call dog-eared.
Yeah.
Because you get those big, thick kind of deposits of weight over the sides of the cut.
Right, and I know that I could always, go back and texturize or soften, but again, just in the interest of trying something a little different today, I am traveling forward and just over directing back. So there's a little bit of length and weight saved, but she's going to have a little more movement through the front.
I was waiting for this one. Frank Mussolino loves your haircut.
Oh, thank
Judith's
you.
hair looks incredible. Who cut yours last?
This one, Andrea's hair.
Oh, cool.
With a little bit of an adjustment from my assistant sidekick Max.
Awesome. Well, it looks great.
Thank you.
Nanette, Julian's video is already available. So if you're looking for Julian Perlingero's video, his whole one-day workshop that we filmed on last weekend, HB Live Academy, Julian's one-day workshop on mobs is available now. So you can go back and watch the whole one-day class at any time. So a little business question from Harris Jack. How much do you charge in the salon here in Southern California?
I currently charge $80 for a haircut. Pricing is that funky point, you know? I wish I could, maybe I want to charge more, maybe I don't. I want to be accessible for my clients.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very respectable price. I think, you know, you can make a living, you know, because basically you're making enough money to make a living. Unfortunately, so many hairdressers undercharge and have a hard time making a living.
Yeah.
Here's a great question. Now, knowing that, Judith, you've been in the industry only 6 years and you're doing so well, Aaliyah Kimball is asking, I'm going to graduate from Aveda soon. What's the best advice you would give me?
Best advice is find a salon with a strong assistant program. Somebody who's going to really take you under their wing and give you the time with a mannequin or with a model and really break things down for you, but then also have you working with them in the salon too. You know, that was huge for me, was just having Monday night classes. Literally had to find 2 models every week, which was rough. This was before Instagram was easy. And
Boy, that 5 years ago was rough, huh?
Yeah.
It was a different time. Now everybody finds their models on social media.
For sure.
Did you used to have to hit the streets and hand out cards and say, hey, would you be interested in being a model?
Tried walking around South Coast Plaza. People get weirded out when you offer a free haircut for some reason.
Well, think about this. If you're doing it, it's one thing.
True.
If I'm doing it, excuse me, would you like a haircut? And for you, they're like, okay, let's chat. For me, they're like calling the police.
And also too, like if you are gonna reach out to somebody, practice your almost your whatever you're gonna say to them, you know, so it is comfortable for you. So whether it's like a pre-done message you're gonna send out on Instagram, or just something you're gonna, use as a conversation starter for someone, practice. I practiced a little bit just speaking out loud before I came in today, so you got to get it out there at some point.
It just goes back to our tagline here: professionals practice. We practice everything.
For sure.
Well, you have to practice everything. I mean, if you're winging it in the way that you converse, the things that you say, you'll get good results sometimes and not others. But if you're practicing, all right, let's talk about this here. Review that. I love the way you pre-cut it and then you go in and cut a bit deeper.
Yeah, so still working with that really intentional point cut, but this is just too much hair for me to get. No matter how long this shear is, I cannot get in there and give it the texture that I'm looking for. So I'm combing up to that distribution that I want it to. I know this is like a hotly debated thing, but I am dropping after. I feel like as long as...
All right, let's get into that debate. I love that you brought that up. So the debate is, some people feel that you must hold it exactly at the elevation when you cut it, and some people feel it's okay to move it and cut it. Obviously, Judith feels it's okay to move it. You want to talk about it?
Yeah, I'm a mover.
I love that you're so nerdy that you can bring that point out.
Yeah, I just feel like, why am I going to strain myself to be up here if I'm being intentional and proper with my tension? That's really where I want it to be. I'm not like going to move it all the way here to where I can feel those hairs pulling. I'm kind of staying right in that zone and then just dropping it lightly.
I think to some degree, since you're cutting looser anyway, it's just going to give it more looseness. It like shuffles the deck in your hand. Like if you have it, the ends are bending and moving around a little bit.
So now it's getting here. I love what she's doing already. I love these pieces around her face, almost working into like...
Say hi to Erica, everyone. Hi, Erica.
She's pretty, isn't she?
That's what we usually do with models, with those close-ups. The models go, hi. And then someone goes, oh, she's really pretty.
So let's see. This is the scary part sometimes, a little bit of a cross-check.
Scary because you're going to go from side to side and you're looking to see if you have balance?
You know what? I'm going to start this way first. I want to see my increase in length. Hopefully it's there. There's a pretty terrible point in my demo days at Tongue Guy. I went up to show the cross check. It was totally off.
Well, can I tell you something? You know, early in my career...
That's why we're here practicing.
Early in my career, training at Vidal Sassoon, and everyone was known to be immaculate precision haircutters, and I never felt good enough until I saw Marquet's cross-checking, and something wasn't perfect. But by the time the haircut was done, it was perfect.
Right.
So, you shouldn't beat yourself up if you cross-check, and that's why we cross-check, because we're not perfect. The goal is it's going to be perfect by the time you're done, not halfway through the haircut.
No, I love that. I mean, it's kind of knowing your direction and knowing that where I can have a little bit of room to, a little bit of leeway, basically, when the time comes.
All right, so you decided to stop cutting and start to dry. I know you're going to keep cutting, doing dry cutting. How did you know when it was time to say dry and then I'll go back to cutting? What did the hair tell you?
My shape is there. I love that I've built up some of that weight. I can see her movement now, that little bit of a layer kicking out. And I love dry cutting, so I really want to get in there, I think, now.
So let me ask you for the audience, is that a Dyson and do you like it?
It's a Dyson and I absolutely love it. Again, I'm kind of petite, I'm short. Blow dryers are too heavy. This thing is powerful, but it is lightweight, so it's just kind of a must for me. I can also get so close to her hair, and I'm not, this is why I do want to be close. I don't want to be super far away, like whereas before where I'm trying to give myself that space. I want the airflow to be right where I want it.
Can you explain, it seems to me like you're trying to kind of get in at the root, especially in the crown, and lift it. So hand drying is an art form. Walk us through your whole concept here with what you're doing.
Yeah, so this is a fun chance for me to kind of just get my hands in her hair and see what it's doing. If I had a mirror in front of me, I would kind of be more somewhere like that here and seeing what it was doing. These are sometimes the moments of inspiration almost, where I can see something different that I wasn't seeing before when I was so into the cutting process. But what I'm doing is getting everything up in the opposite direction, but still getting in there with a lot of tension and keeping that airflow really smooth and kind of parallel to her hair. Almost flat wrapping through these sides with my hands. Still kind of thinking of the fact that I did have a natural fall, and this is going to lay down anyway. I don't want to build out a ton of volume, so I may start with a little bit of lift, but I'm kind of going in with my finish in that downward motion.
Beautiful comment from Jane Costanzo, says she knows what's necessary to perfect her skill set as well as build a clientele. A stylist for only 6 years, already teaching with Hairbrained. She gets it and she's awesome in every way. Great future ahead. But I was just thinking, having known Judith a little bit, I think that she's very focused. So what are your next plans? Not to put you on the spot, but you're successful behind the chair now. You're building on Instagram, building that presence, that following. What's your goal for your career in the next couple of years?
That's a good question. I'm excited to see where it goes, but I really do want to continue working on just the education for the assistants. I don't want people or young stylists to have to go to a big name like Tony Guy or Vidal Sassoon in order to get quality education. So I'm just really excited now to be reworking through some of these classes with them and learning about myself and also helping them learn.
So more education, training assistants in the salon. Yeah. I'll give you guys a little sneak peek. One of our biggest events of the year at Hairbrained is Teach-In in Long Beach. It's at the ISSU show in the end of January. And I've just asked Judith as the first guest, actually the second, because I did chat with Robert Cronies about being a guest, and hopefully you can make it. But you're my second guest.
I said yes.
She said yes. She said yes.
So for those of you who don't know, Teach-In is our live event where we get on stages at mostly major trade shows, and we try to put a diverse group of hairdressers together to represent the crowd. And I think someone who's representing the youth and the female youth especially really, really incredibly well is Jude. She's got her own style, she's got her own brand in a way that's getting out there, and I think it's something that, you know, deserves to be on stage for everyone to see. So she's in.
I'm also playing with colors, which has been a funky thing to work in the last year as I've gone independent. So hopefully in the next year I'll decide if I want to keep doing colors and keep focusing on cut. But it's been a fun way for me to look at cut in a new way too. Just wear layers or stitching depending on what I want to do color-wise. So just expanding my creativity in any way that I can.
Jude, can you talk a little bit about the brush and the type of technique that you're using now? We have a question from Tiffany Smoke about what kind of brush you're using, and talk to us about why you switched from hands to the brush.
So this is almost like a Mason Pearson, but it is from a Rojo. I'm a little bit of like a merch collector when it comes to my tools. So I love anything that gives me these good memories. So it's great because it gives me a really nice tension as I'm going through the tone. The boar bristle is adding a lot of shine, and it also has this really kind of subtle rounded feel, kind of a cushion, so it'll give me a little bit of movement.
Here's a fun fact. I first met Judith, I think you might have still been in cosmetology school. She was a model for me at the Rojo booth in Long Beach, and I gave her a very short, it was the shortest haircut you ever had. It was a true crop, you know, finger length, details all around the hairline.
You took her there, Gerard.
Ever since. This is as long as it's gotten in 6 years.
It was my first intro to razor cutting too, which has been really cool. So, you know, earlier we spoke about this advice for young stylists graduating. I think get yourself out there and just introduce to new techniques, just things that you want to play with and just add to your skill set. Even if it's not right away, it'll start helping you develop your own personal style and just, you know, give you an idea of where you want to go.
And now I know you're definitely doing a lot of scissor cutting, and I know you've been playing a bit with razor cutting. How's it going? Judith did a one-day class with me, did another class again with Nick Rojo.
Yes.
So you've had a lot of razor training in effect? Is it happening or what?
It really is, and I was like trying to think through it today, but I really wanted to get more into this, like practicing something that can be practical for me lately.
Right.
Also didn't want to cut myself. So I'll be working through this shade like with our systems next week. So I'm like, this is a good way to play with it.
But you're doing more razor cutting. I think, when was it, maybe back in December, I did a one-day class, and you were in that class, and you were just starting to play with the razor a little bit. Have you been using it more behind the chair?
I have, actually. And it's been a ton of fun. I think as somebody who has moved away from a lot of wet cutting, it's been a good introduction and inspiration to get back in there and see what the texture is doing when it is, you know, going from wet to dry.
So we can see how this blow dry is coming together and how you just simply sculpt that hair and move it around. A lot of wrapping on the top and then laying the hair over the brush in the middles through the sides to get some polish out of it. Your buddy Calvin Tran has a question, and you'll probably address this as you continue, but if you knew she was going to wear this layered bob and a very direct side parting, would you have cut it any differently?
I definitely would have worked the layers off of her side parting. But I think I'm going to work a tiny bit of a fringe actually through the front, so I do want it to just push forward right now. But I definitely would have worked that slide over direction and layering pattern.
So that's a great point. If you know you're going to keep the front a little bit longer, you would layer off a side parting and maybe cut them a little asymmetrically. But since you're going to cut in a fringe or a bang, you just let it fall naturally. Because all that hair is going to fall through the back.
Exactly. I think there's some more options I think right now. I mean, I got, you know, versatility as much as possible. So I think I also sometimes like to push clients a little bit, you know, into trying to be a little bit different. And I think playing with a parting is such an easy way to do that. So as often as possible, if it fits with the look, I will go in off of like a center part, just for options. And then detail, dry, from wherever you really do want to wear it.
So it looks like the hair is almost dry. Yep. You feel like you got it right where you need it?
Yeah,
and now you're going to continue in with some dry cutting to really personalize. So if you're just joining us, let me jump in here. We have our beautiful model today is Erica. She comes from the Pivot Point family, and we're working on Professionals Who Practice, which is a series we've been doing now for about 6 months where we get great professionals and we show and support the idea that no matter how successful or great you are, you need to keep practicing to refine. So we use a beautiful Pivot Point tripod. This is the universal swivel. And then we go through a very series of different mannequins. Today we're using Erica, which is a more reasonably priced mannequin, under $100. But gives a great lesson. And she starts off a bit longer. Judith cut her once yesterday to practice herself on a long bob. Then she came in, brought the length up. Great tips on point cutting, great tips on layering. Now we're going to get into some dry cutting and finishing. And again, we're with Jude Viola. So share your love for her and send in the questions. I'll be happy to ask.
Cool. So now I do want to play with a little bit of a bang. And actually this section I took, it's a little too deep. So I'm going to soften that just a touch. I'm kind of doing like a curved diagonal back, just mirroring her hairline. And I want to work in a little bit of like a baby bang almost, I think. It's again something I like to throw new things at clients every once in a while.
So, you know, when I go, those of you that want to check out Judith's work, go to @Jude Viola on Instagram. And the one thing you'll notice is all of her work is edgy, but it's super pretty. And so she's not afraid to get in there and have these shorter bangs and fringes. But when you step back and look at it, there's nothing severe about it. So talk to us a little bit about how you get that strength in there, but still keep it super feminine and pretty.
I think a lot of it is, you know, just this feeling like we've been talking about of structure and vision. Having, I'll look at you guys, physicality. Let's do something about that. Professionals who practice sometimes, again, if this was a real client, she would have been weirded out by the fact that that popped up, but she's a mannequin, so I'm going to switch my technique a little bit. Let's re-wet that little middle part down. But yeah, so structure and vision. So really mixing my technique and sections and distribution elevation just with the visual aspect, but always starting with that strong structure.
So here you've taken this little halo section around the front hairline, diagonal back about 2 inches from the hairline, and you're point cutting, rounding with the head and then dropping it down to see how it lays.
Exactly.
And if it feels a little bit jumpy, you can wet it down and try to tighten it up.
You know, again, this is the beauty of the fact that she's not going to get mad at me. So if it looks weird for a second, I'm not going to keep going in that direction. I can just adjust. So I'm going into slightly like pivoting sections through here. This is something I've been playing with in the salon and just really enjoying. I know that like the kind of the rounded fringe has been a thing for a while, but I really want to play with like having this sit softly as it goes through the side towards her brows.
Our good buddy Steven Statlin back from New Jersey is tuning in. Always a big supporter, thank you. Amanda Berner loves your cutting style and perfect blend of soft and edgy. And guys, if you want to see more of Judith's work, be sure to follow her on Instagram at Jude Viola. Again, one of my personal favorites. I'm always looking there to see what she's doing. And to be quite honest, has a beautiful eye for balance and texture. I'm your #1 fan.
Thank you. So I'm going to work through just these 2 sections on either side before I go in and work into some layering on the sides instead. Let's see. Can you see me guys still?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, do you have a particular, everyone's a little different about body position, but do you have any particular pet peeves or ways you like to stand? Or I noticed you kind of came around to this side. Do you feel comfortable cutting it from either side, or do you have a theory?
Well, for me, since I am working with some over direction, it only makes sense to pull it towards myself. From this angle, I can see that really nice flat plane, so I know I've distributed it right to where I want it.
So you kind of stand on the opposite side to help you over direct.
I would say, again, over the past year, going independent and kind of being on my own, my body positioning, my technique, it's gotten a little sloppy, you know? It's like Home Alone or something. And like having
You're breaking the rules?
Yeah, but you know, I noticed like the little imbalances. So it's just, you know, today's a good reminder, and working again with the assistants coming up has been a really good reminder of kind of practicing what you preach and making sure I'm going to get the effect I really want.
Yeah, if you want to stay on top of your career and your craft, teaching. You know, people always ask after they take a class or they watch one of these videos or they watch us on the Hairbrained Live Academy, they say, well, you know, what's next? And I say the next thing to do is teach someone. Grab anyone that's interested, the youngest assistant, the oldest stylist, and say, hey, I want to share something with you. Spend 2 hours teaching someone. I bet Judith, out of all this, is the person who's learned the most.
For sure.
Because when you have to explain it and do it and really think about it, I can only imagine how many aha moments that she's had just sharing this technique.
Yeah, definitely. It's just that reminder. If I can speak about it and just be aware of what I'm doing, that really helps me to know that I know it.
There's another great technical question coming in from Gerard. Noticing that you didn't cut the outline in around the face and then layer it. You went right for layering.
Yeah.
Can you explain your thinking?
I just want it to be soft.
So it's always softer if you go in and do the internal, and then you'll probably do some detailing on the outline afterwards, pointing and slicing, as opposed to putting in the outline and then layering it.
Yeah, I think, you know, I really, when we go back to this idea of the cool girl hair thing, a lot of these cool girls that I've like reached out to, they're like, yeah, I cut my own hair, and I don't think that they're being super mindful about cutting in their outline necessarily. So
they just cut off the pieces that don't look good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you guys saw, I almost went in with that angle that I didn't want. I'm shifting back.
It's super interesting, again, that subtlety of what you said. It's like sometimes the best results that I've had personally are just going in and cutting off the stuff that I don't like, rather than following like a set pattern and being like, I'm going to square layer the hair and then texturize it. Not to say that I always go that way, but I can think of sometimes where I'm just like, I'm just going to cut off some of this stuff that's not working for me.
Yeah, it's that combination of visual and technical that I really love. So I know, again, I'm wetting her down again. I'm going to end up putting a little bit of a texture spray around the front. I don't want that to get too gummy or too like sticky, so I like to put it with a little bit of water. That way I can see how the front's drying as I go through and finish detailing out the layering in the back. All dry.
Well, it's looking great. Lots of love coming in from people saying this is like real technique that they can use, and Nanette Negrette says, bravo, she loves it. I always pronounce her last name wrong. She's probably going to tell me. Amanda Berner, again, loving your style. Cindy Jones, love. So we're so glad that you guys love. And again, I think Judith is a super talent, and she's only got more to give. And that's what this is all about. So now coming back to the outline.
So now I am going through, still pretty chunky with this. This is where that longer shear is going to come in handy. I can really get my fingers a good like 1.5 inches away from that perimeter line, so I can actually go in deep and give me a little bit more of those like divots and kind of funky, chunky pieces. I am doing that for the first section too, a little deeper. I don't mind if she has some little shorter bits close to the hairline, because that's going to sit on the underneath anyway. I'm now going with a little bit of a higher elevation just for softness, and I'm leaving that weight to kind of sit on top of it.
And all those layers that were blended into the top, some of those are going to fall over this and obscure it a bit, yeah?
Yeah, I can't wait to see that. And a little bit of carving and slicing.
How do you choose when you're going to point versus when you're going to slice? Is it just an intuitive thing, or do you have a technical reason?
So I do want a little bit of that kick and like flip out. So going in a little, this is going to be a little more aggressive in my point cut. It's actually going to help me give a little bit more direction. I can also keep the integrity and kind of structure on that end, and then intentionally going through kind of the center of it to create those shorter bits.
All right, Nanette, I'll give it a try. Nigretai. Nigretai? Nanette Nigretai. Did I get it right for once after all these years? Tell me if I got it right. Nigretai. Nanette is just one of our, super students who's always watching and sharing, and I always give her a shout out, and I never get her last name right.
It's a great last name.
Yeah.
You should post a video of saying
How to pronounce my last name.
Okay. So one thing I just realized too, Gerard, which again, I think having students or just somebody around to ask you a question, it's going to push you. I'm going to go in here with a slice because I can see that little curvature that the hair is doing. I kind of want to play off of that. So if I did a point cut, I'm going to be almost going like anti that curve. So I'm not going to come in and just, play it up a little bit.
And again, that's a great example. Like you said, I asked the question, so you have to think about it, huh? So, when you teach, you learn. Anybody out there that wants to get better at their craft, I promise you, practicing and teaching, getting great mannequins like this, like you can't do this. You can't just go in a room and hang out with a couple of hairdressers for as much time as you want, as easily with a live model as you can with a mannequin. So that's the message here. Pivot Point makes the best mannequins on the planet, and you can get some, and you can kind of do what we're doing. We're nerding out, and we're getting better at our craft.
For sure. So I am going to start more towards the front with this texturizing and detailing. Sometimes I would find myself almost getting exhausted as I work from back to front. So I'm supporting this all around her face, and I would want my model to see that texture and just her shape coming into, fruition in the front first, rather than her sitting with like all this chunky funkiness around the front while I'm just doing something.
That's another great behind the chair tip. If you can do something around the front that shows impact, kind of get it done early in the haircut. So you can kind of win that client over, and they're like, oh man, this is looking cute. Everybody at home, as you were cutting the bang-in, is, oh, this looks cute, this looks cute. So imagine the client in your chair.
Yep. So working in now, first doing some aggressive point cutting. You can see I have those really big kind of peaks and valleys. Then a little bit more seamless slicing through those layers through the front. So I can see where that round layer is now hugging her head really nicely, but it's getting a little heavy through the interior kind of. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a step back from my point cutting and switch to a little bit of channel cutting. So taking that plane straight out and getting in, let's see, can I turn that for you here?
Our buddy Chris Ray is giving you a shout out. Looking good, Judith.
Cool. So I'm going to come in and go almost more, again, with that flow of her hair from where those layers are really sitting and then kind of through. I don't know if that makes sense. You guys feel free to ask a question if you need a better explanation of that.
Everyone's totally understanding you. Your explanations are great. And, right now just a lot of love coming in. But if you guys do have any technical questions, let me know. I'll be glad to share them. I'm on question duty over here.
So you can see with this section here, if you want to just come around the top. Let's see, forward.
Yeah, there you go. And then up to tighten it.
So like I said, this is still sitting heavy. It's like sitting with the curvature of her head, but it's just like a little flat to me. So I'm going to go in and take that section. I love the white teeth on this comb because I can really just like cup the hair nicely, then switch to my fine teeth. That's really bulky for me. So I'm going to come in through the middle and just...
It's almost like a razor in action right there with your shear or your scissor.
Yeah, it is dry though, so I am being a little less aggressive, just in that I am doing a lot of movement, so I'm opening and closing. So I don't want to hear that like crazy, like...
The sound of hair dying?
Yeah, exactly.
So by opening and closing it, kind of gently cutting rather than just pulling it through in one swipe and pulling the cuticle off.
Exactly. Cool. So now I'm going to keep moving through the back. From here I am going to switch back to a point cut. And I think this is where, again, that almost intuition with cutting comes in. You really want to keep an eye on what's actually going on.
Harris Jack, who's over, I believe he said he was in Wales, says it's 2 a.m. here, but he can't stop watching because he doesn't want to miss the end result. So you've got a fan in Wales.
Super cool. I'll try to take a picture of her in the salon tomorrow too, maybe with the ring light. I love bringing some life to mannequins. Again, another challenge. I know we've all had that like client in the salon who really needs some direction, maybe doesn't have like that super forward style. So I almost think of like Erica as that person. She's not really giving me anything, so I just have to make my own choices.
She's a bit dry.
Yeah. So coming in just straight out, and I can see that increase in length. So that was a little bit of my build-up of graduation, so bringing everything down and straight. But I want to come in, and I'm really looking for kind of these almost like see-through spots right now, and I want to just encourage those pieces.
Do you think about that corner at all, like between the layers at the top and the one length when I pull that out? So
Yeah.
it feels like to me like you're trying to break that corner up so it'll be a little bit
Exactly.
looser on the outline.
Exactly.
Harris Jacks followed you on Instagram, so you've got a new follower.
Thank you. I will say, like, I'm so grateful for you guys at Hairbrained. Elevate was one of my first, again, chances to work with you all, and it's just been super cool to see what happens. You can't help but look at the numbers on Instagram, you know, it's kind of like an evil that's just there. But it's fun to like keep track of the followers, keep track of the likes. It's not everything, but it's numbers.
You know, I did a little talk today at the American Board of Certified Hair Colorists Luncheon, and I was saying if you think about it as a game, but it's not about win or lose.
Yeah.
It's about you want to keep growing, keep adding those numbers. There's never a winning point like, oh, I hit 100,000, I am the winner of Instagram.
No.
You know, it's just like every time you can keep growing to keep that movement forward. So yeah, I want to see that for you. I want to see that really start to steamroll.
Yeah, I think, like, again, at the end of the day, it's opportunities like this, or it's more opportunities in the chair, like seeing new clients come in. That's what I'm looking for. I don't know if there's going to be necessarily, you know, a new Andrew does hair or somebody who's going to get into the hundreds of thousands overnight. So I kind of just want to encourage people to don't freak out about the numbers too much. Just make sure that you're growing personally and you're doing the type of work you want to do.
Well, and let's turn it around. Forget about the numbers. What about the relationships? How many cool relationships with your fellow hairdressers and with clients have you made because of social media? Even if it was only 5,000 followers, if 3 of them became dear friends, isn't that incredibly valuable?
That's been the coolest part of all of this. Again, I'm a former shy girl, still shy girl, but to just be able to meet people, like pre-meet people, like pre-cutting, pre-meet, and then meet them in person, it just feels like it's just that much easier to connect. So, yeah, I think that's my biggest thing, is just being able to actually translate this from digital to real life connection.
So some of the students at home, Tiffany and Karan, are asking how long you book in the salon. How long does something like this typically take you behind the chair?
I'm not a rusher. I book an hour 15 for my clients, and they appreciate it.
An hour and 15 for your haircuts, and you like to take your time.
I really
Do you do all of your own work from shampooing to blow drying, or do you work with an assistant?
I'm super lucky now to actually work with an assistant. Maxident, give him a follow. He's looking for models if anybody in OC wants a haircut.
What's his handle?
Maxident.
Maxident, like accident,
Yeah,
but with an M and an
yeah.
X?
So he'll get like the shampoo started. I'll consult. He'll shampoo while I'm just like detailing. Then we'll do a little quick switch off. He'll get them checked out for me, and then I'll move on to the next. So it really works well for me, just because it allows me to stay present and not have to like overly worry about, oh man, is my next one here? Are they early? Are they late? It just helps me manage my flow of the day. I think that was something that I challenged myself on, which was like, when are you allowed to have an assistant? You know, what does that look like? And for me, it's just been, I want to start sharing, and I want to push myself in different ways. So it's been cool.
So all this beautiful finishing, really putting those finishing touches on the sides, and then you mentioned you're probably going to add a little bit of product into the hair?
Just to finish up that texture. So one thing I want to do, just this last thing, this little section here, from kind of like apex down, it sits super heavy. So I've been noticing myself paying special attention to that lately too. So I am going to come in Actually, let's see how I can approach this technically. So I'm going to take a little bit of the center section, like a profile almost, so I know I'm going to be hitting that equally on both sides. And I'm going to kind of layer in a short to long.
So that felt like it was falling a little clunky to you, so you're kind of getting a slight bit of concave or inversion on it.
Yeah, and that makes sense, right? Because that was where I did my over direction too. So you can have an idea in mind, and then if you want to shift it, I think shift it. So I'm going to come back here and bring everything in. There's my loose guideline. I think that's going to be a big thing, is training your eye if you're doing dry cutting or texturizing, is training your eye to start seeing that guide.
We always call it being able to look through the hair.
Yeah.
Because when it's wet and it sticks together, you can see lines, but when it's dry, you have to look through it, get your head in a certain position, which is one of the reasons why I feel like you have to move around a lot, because you have to get your head positioned to be able to look through.
For sure. And, if there was a mirror here, maybe it would be easier, but there's not.
No budget for a mirror here.
Cool. So, let's see.
Looking great. Judith, lots of love coming in from at home. Everyone's eager to see those little finishing touches.
Cool. This is the fun part, and this is where, one of the most important moments in my career really was just sitting with the doll head or my mentors and playing with just different texturizing techniques. I think that's really helped me in just getting to this point where I can move from just technical to structural into seeing like what I want to do.
Again, looking great. Lots of love coming in. Lots of our regulars so happy and impressed with your work, and lots of new people. Lots of people saying they've started following you, so that's exciting. And now coming in for the finish, the pièce de résistance.
I just started playing with this product yesterday. It's a texture spray from Bonafide.
Show it to the camera so everyone at home can know what it is. So I haven't heard of that one before.
So I love the idea, like the concept of a salt spray, but I always felt like they left something to be desired from me. Like they would dry the hair out more than I wanted. It would lose shine. So what I love about this one, I'm noticing, you almost get like a little bit of a grittiness to it, as if I like dried in a wax almost. So shout out to Penny at the Young American for sharing her love of this one with me yesterday. Actually, Kelly, you saw her finishing out her little
I sure did. He was so cute.
Yeah. So spritzing and then kind of scrunching.
It just kind of puts that moisture and bounce back into the hair.
Yeah.
Sometimes with kind of natural styling, you stretch the hair out a little bit and then you revert it back. Kind of notice that. You smoothed it, then you kind of dampen it with product, and you get somewhere in between blown out and natural, which gives it a really great polish.
Yeah, I think again, the nice thing about a doll head, I don't want to keep you guys here all night, but you could play with this for hours. I mean, maybe I'll take her home and do some more. I'm not sure.
Are you going to take Erica to dinner tonight? Maybe you guys will have a little hair date?
Yeah.
Well, as Judith kind of finishes up, I want to thank everyone at home for watching. I want to thank Pivot Point for being an incredible sponsor and making these wonderful mannequins for passionate hairdressers like myself and Judith to practice. We'll be here tomorrow. I believe there's another Facebook Live, but we'll be back. We're back all the time. So peace out, guys. Thanks for the support. Thank you, Judith, for an incredible lesson. Love you.